Veni Madhava's character was clearly proclaimed by his short stature, small neck, black complexion, and his eyes which blinked frequently. He liked to pry into everything that was going on, rather than taking care of his own business. But his involvement in others' affairs was never particularly useful. After listening to the old lady, he frowned slightly, then boasted, "There is no problem. I just need your permission. Veni Madhava can accomplish anything. You know me quite well. I can make money just by counting the waves. Let me discuss this with him just once. And if I succeed, then you'll treat me to a nice feast with puris and kachoris?" He's pretty proud, right? Okay, let's see what happens. "Brajanath has taken his meal and he's asleep now," said grandmother. "All right, I'll come in the morning and put things in order," replied Veni Madhava. And he returned home. The next day he returned early in the morning carrying a lota in his hand and completed his morning ablutions. When Brajanath saw him, he was a little surprised and said, "Brother, how have you come so early in the morning?" Veni Madhava answered, "Dada, you have been studying and teaching Nyaya Shastra for a long time. You are the son of Pandit Harinath Chudamani. You have become famous all over the country. You are the only surviving male member of the house, and if you don't have any heirs, who do you suppose will take care of the big house of yours? Brother, we have a request. Please get married." Brajanath replied, "Brother, don't give me unnecessary trouble." Yes, Nyaya Shastra is logic, yeah. Nyaya means logic. "Brother, don't give me unnecessary trouble. Nowadays I'm accepting the shelter of Sri Gaura Sundar's bhaktas, and I don't have any desire to get involved in worldly affairs. I feel real peace in the company of the Vaishnavas in Mayapur, and I don't find any attraction for this world. I will either accept sannyas or spend my life in the shelter of the Vaishnava's lotus feet. I have expressed my heart to you because I know you are my close friend, but don't disclose this to anyone else." So, this is the heart of a real renunciate. And if renunciation it's natural and it's not artificial for him, it may be artificial for others, but he's evolved, and usually if a person is evolved in many lifetimes, that when he takes birth, he's just not attracted to anything in this world. And marriage means generally being more involved in things of this world. And so some people are so evolved in their past lives that when they come into this world, they want nothing to do with it. And they can be very renounced. So Brajanath seems to be such a person. Veni Madhava understood that nothing but trickery could change Brajanath's mind, so he cleverly curbed his feelings, and in order to create a particular impression, he said, "I have always remained your assistant in whatever you have done. I used to carry your books and when you were studying in the Sanskrit school, so I will carry your staff and water pot when you accept sannyas." Ha! It is difficult to understand the minds of wicked people. They have two tongues, and they say one thing with one and exactly the opposite with the other. They are bandits in the garb of saints, carrying the name of Sri Ram in the mouth and a knife under their armpit. When Bhaktivinoda Thakur was alive, there were a lot of people like this who were externally sadhus, but their lives were a mess. Brajanath was a simple person. Warming to Veni Madhava's sweet words, he said, "Brother, I have always regarded you as my dear friend. Grandmother is just an old woman. She doesn't understand serious matters. She is very enthusiastic to drown me in the ocean of worldly affairs by getting me married to some girl. It will be a relief if you can change her mind and somehow dissuade her. I will always be indebted to you. So, would you like to hear something funny? Very interesting phenomena in the Hare Krishna movement is that the women were always in anxiety when the senior brahmacharis or the senior sannyasis would preach to the men about not getting married, because they thought, who am I going to marry? So the talk of renunciation was not so pleasing to the women. Also, I heard an interesting story. In India, one devotee attended a sannyas initiation. And he said some elderly Indian women were there. And these sannyasis were young men, so they were renouncing everything. And he said these elderly women were in tears, that these young boys were giving up everything. They couldn't tolerate it. They couldn't deal with it. It was like atomic bomb just dropped on their lives. So, that's what's happening in this story. So Veni Madhava replied, no one will dare to oppose your desire as long as Sharamatma is living. Dada, you will see what I am capable of, but just let me know one thing. Why have you developed such hatred towards this world? Who is advising you to cultivate such feelings of renunciation? Bhartanath explained about his renunciation and said, there's one elderly and experienced Babaji called Raghunath Das Babaji in Mayapur. That's his full name. He is my instructor, and I go every day, after dusk, to the shelter of his feet to find relief from the burning fire of this material world. He is very merciful to me. The evil Veni Madhava started thinking, now I understand Brother Vaj's weakness. He has to be brought back to the right track by deception, force, and skill. This sounds like the first deprogrammer. Veni Madhava was the Adi deprogrammer, the original deprogrammer. He has to be brought back to the right track by deception, force, or skill. Outwardly he said, brother, don't worry, I am going home now, but I will gradually change grandmother's mind. So now I'll tell you something very shocking. Make sure you're sitting down, because if you're standing up, you might fall over. And I don't want to be responsible. At the time of Bhaktisiddhanta, many, many young men were joining his movement. Actually, it's said the brightest young men in India were joining his movement. In fact, Mahatma Gandhi came to him and said, we need these men for the independence movement, and they're all joining you. So wait till we get independence. Don't take all these men. I don't know if you know that. In fact, I went to Mahatma Gandhi's house today. So, interesting. So Mahatma Gandhi was actually had come to Bhaktisiddhanta, because Bhaktisiddhanta was getting the best men. But quite often when men would join, their family would come to take them. And it was hard to keep them. It was a common thing. And Indian boys, and girls as well, but we're talking about boys now, have so much affection and devotion for their parents. If their mothers come and cry, it's so difficult for them to stay in the ashram. Oh yeah, Sankarshan said, yeah. Raghunath Das's father was trying to tie him up. It was a kind of deprogramming. So, Bhaktisiddhanta would lose so many, or potentially could lose so many of his brahmacharis, because the mother would come, ah! And then the brahmachari would see that, and the affection and the bond between the mother and the son in India is just so deep that once the mother comes and cries, they couldn't stay. So, one time, the parents of one brahmachari got the police to find their son and take him out of the mutt. Now, I hope you're not standing up because you're going to fall over when I tell you this. This is very transcendental. Now, let me preface it by the fact that he said if he didn't, what I'm going to tell you he did, he said if he didn't do it, he wouldn't have had any men. They'd all would have left. So the police came, and he took that brahmachari, and he hid him under his bed in his room. And the police came and said, "Where's so-and-so?" And he said, "I don't know, I haven't seen him. He's not here." Interesting, huh? I mean, we wouldn't recommend you doing that in the world today. You might end up with life imprisonment. But he made the point it was such a difficult thing to preach in that time, and he would have to take drastic measures like that. And he said, if I didn't do that, everybody, something like that I couldn't go on. So many people would leave. I couldn't keep these men. Anyway. So, as Sankrishan's pointing out, that we have a history within our own Gaudiya Sampradaya of parents having difficulty with their children becoming full-time devotees. In this case, Raghunath Das Goswami's parents were devotees of some sort. So even devotee parents. Interesting. So, Vedi Madhava pretended to take the road that led to his home, but instead he took another way and reached Srinivasanga in Mayapur. Srivasanga. There he sat on the raised platform under the bakul tree and began to admire the opulences of the Vaishnavas. These Vaishnavas are actually enjoying the world. They have such beautiful houses and lovely kunjas. This is such a nice dais and a wonderful courtyard. In each of the kutiras, a Vaishnava sat chanting Harinam on his beads. They seemed quite content, like the bulls of religion. The women of the neighboring villages who came to bathe in the Ganga of their own accord supplied the Vaishnavas with fruits, vegetables, water, and various edibles. Veni Madhava thought, the Brahmanas have systemized karmakanda. Hold on a second. The Brahmanas have systemized karmakanda. Now I lost my place. Let's see. Brahmanas have systemized karmakanda to receive these facilities, but instead these groups of Babajis are enjoying the results. All glories to Kali Yuga. These disciples of Kali are having a wonderful time. Oh, my birth in a high Brahmin family is useless. No one even cares about us anymore. What to speak of offering us fruits and water? These Vaishnavas even condemn Brahmins and abuse and insult us by calling us lowly and foolish. Brother Braja fits this description quite well. Although he's such a well-educated man, he seems to have sold himself to these sly, loincloth people. I, Veni Madhava, will reform Brajanath and these Babajis as well. So, the reason he's writing the story in this way is because this is what people were like then. They didn't have respect for Vaishnavas. And it was a very caste-conscious culture. And I don't know if you know this, but before the time of Bhaktisiddhanta, the Vaishnavas were not considered very elevated. They were considered not scholarly, not educated. They weren't considered Brahmins. They were considered lower than Brahmins. So, traditionally, Vaishnavas did not get the Upanayam or the Brahma Gayatri, the first line of Gayatri which we chant. Traditionally, the Vaishnavas did not get that mantra. That is the mantra which initiates you as a Brahmin. They did get the other Diksha mantras that we as Brahmins chant. But this Om Bor Bhava Shwa, they didn't get that. And traditionally, boys in Brahmin families were given that mantra about 8 years old, and then they got the thread. That's called Upanayanam. Then they could go to school, they could learn the mantras and worship the deities. So, because of the situation in India at that time, Bhaktisiddhanta changed the initiation a little bit, and he gave Brahminical initiation, Upanayanam, because he was teaching that Vaishnavas are above the Brahmins, but at least he wanted to show that they're also Brahmins. So that's why he gave that initiation, but that initiation is not necessary. It was just to exemplify that Vaishnavas are Brahmins. And that is the first line that the Brahmins get of their Gayatri mantra, which are not Vaishnava mantras per se. So Bhaktisiddhanta, he broke the mold in many ways, not just that way, there are many ways. Many of the things that were going on during the time of Bhakti Vinod Thakur, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur changed, because he was revolutionary and he wanted to spread Krishna consciousness broadly, and he was really at odds with these Brahmins. These Brahmins they didn't like his movement. And then he's taking people who aren't born in Brahmin families, and then he's initiating them as Brahmins, and that's considered a travesty by the Brahmin class. And then it's like, how can the Brahmin class monopolize things when you're taking lechas or anybody and you're initiating them as Brahmins? So they didn't like it. So that's why Bhaktivinoda Thakur has this in his story, and that's what preaching at that time in India, that's what they were up against. Now things are changing, because in modern times it's just considered so not politically correct to be caste conscious. So the caste consciousness in many parts of India is dissolving just because of our connection with the Western world, and we want to be politically correct. Thinking like this, Veni Madhava entered one of the kutiras, which happened to be the one in which Sri Raghunath Das Babaji was sitting on a mat made of banana trees, chanting his Harinam. A person's character is evident from his face. Okay, I'll tell you a story. Story time, everyone. For us in India, it's bedtime stories. For you in America, it's morning stories. So, as you know, Prabhupada, his health declined for about a year at least. But it was getting maybe 6 months or so, or 3 months or so, I don't know, towards the end of his life. Then he was getting more help and more treatment, and then I think he or one devotee had a dream of a doctor with Ramanuja Tilakan, and so they tried to find him, and they went to find him. I don't know if this was the doctor that came this particular day, but different doctors were coming. So one doctor would come and looked at Prabhupada, and Prabhupada said to his servant, he said, well, what do you think of him? And the servant said, I don't know, he just came in and spoke to you, he just came in and looked at you and left, so I don't know. And Prabhupada said, well, you saw his face. So what do you think? What did you feel by seeing his face? So Prabhupada expected or understood, and I guess expected, that we would by looking at someone's face, we could judge them. Interesting. So that's what's happening here. Person's character is evident from his face, and the old Babaji could understand that Kali personified had entered in the form of this son of a Brahmin. So this Veni Madhava was born in a Brahmin family. And now Bhaktivinoda Thakur is using this example that's there in the Bhagavatam, that Kali Yuga entered because of the offense of the Brahmin. So when the Brahmin class becomes degraded, that is the heralding of Kali Yuga, because the Brahmins are the head. So once you lose the head, you lose everything. Vaishnavas consider themselves lower than a blade of grass. They offer respect to those who insult them. And they pray for the well-being of an opponent, even if he tortures them. Accordingly, Babaji Maharaj respectfully offered Veni Madhava a seat. Veni Madhava had no Vaishnav qualities at all. So after sitting down, he offered his blessings to Babaji Maharaj, considering himself above all Vaishnava etiquette. Ho ho! This Veni Madhava came in. He's a Brahmin. So as I said, the Brahmins consider themselves the highest of the high. And so they consider the Vaishnavas lower. So there you have this exalted Raghunath Das Babaji, self-realized soul, pure devotee, situated in love of Krishna. And this guy shows up, Veni Madhava, and he's so proud, he offers his blessings. So this is the way it works, Prabhus. Don't offer blessings to superiors. The way it works is you ask for blessings from superiors and you offer blessings to juniors. So you don't bless your superiors. That's not the way it works. Now, Bhaktivinoda Thakur is bringing up this point of the pride of this character. He's saying, look at a Vaishnava, look at how he thinks of himself, and look at this character. He thinks he's the, as we say, the best thing that ever happened to the world. And we say in America, the best thing that ever happened to America since apple pie. Which means you think apple pie is the greatest thing that happened to America, but since then I'm the greatest thing. So, pride is a symptom of unalloyed, pure and unalloyed, God's gift to the world. I'm God's gift to the world. Pride is a symptom of unalloyed, unadulterated Maya. That's the full symptom of it. And humility is a symptom of pure devotion. Senya has blessed everyone on Facebook. Wow. He's got Shakti. But you weren't doing it because you thought you were better, so it's okay. If you bless thinking you're better, of course, no, you don't bless, you pray, just like we prayed for Prabhupada when he was sick, so you can pray. Your guru might say, pray for me. So you're praying for his welfare, you're praying for the success of his programs, like that. That's okay. But blessing is different. So we'll just assume that Senya was praying for everyone's well-being. So, pride is the vehicle by which we imitate Krishna. Humility is the vehicle by which we serve Krishna. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur said, do not manipulate yourself, do not manipulate your position within the Vaishnava Sangha to get even one drop of recognition. Recognition may come to you, that's one thing. But if you're manipulating to get it, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur said, that is evil. That is an evil desire. Isn't that interesting? I don't know if any of you ever thought of that as evil. Does you think evil is like, kidnapping children or something? Or, But he said, the desire, the attempt to get recognition, you actually look for it and you manipulate situations to get it. He said, that is evil desire. If it's evil desire, that means it's going to be destructive. So it's a good thought, it's a good instruction to meditate on. I mean, it's like we're all proud, but I don't think most of us think that if I say, I'm going to be the #1 book distributor because I want to get the honor, I don't think anybody thinks that's evil. They think, well, it's good because I'll distribute more books. But if the motive is that you're going to be recognized amongst the Vaishnavas, you're going to be distinguished Then Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur says that's evil. He was cautious, very cautious, just like a parent when they see their child sniffling or they see something abnormal, then they're concerned. Well, maybe you have something, maybe you should bundle up, maybe we need to give you vitamin C. Very concerned. So if he didn't see humility within his disciples, he was very concerned. Very concerned. He spoke a lot about it. Spoke a lot about humility. Tremendous amounts. And I don't know if you all know, but Prabhupada expressed his humility in very interesting ways. In one conversation, Prabhupada expressed, he said, you are all Vaishnavas. You are all going back to Godhead, but I'm not a Vaishnava, I'm going to hell. He just expressed that sentiment. You imagine sitting in Prabhupada's presence and hearing him say that. It just must have been devastating. So, and then one devotee said, well, Prabhupada, if you're going to hell, then we want to go with you. And Prabhupada said, no, you are not going to hell. You are Vaishnavas. You're going back to Godhead. Wow. So, that's how Prabhupada felt. That's how he saw. He never felt that he was a master of his disciples or controller or that he had any right over them. There was one conversation where, I forget exactly what it was. Oh yeah, a devotee had a bad marriage, or perhaps her husband left. Somehow it didn't work. And, she was thinking, okay, well, I shouldn't get married, but after some time it was hard for her. And she asked Prabhupada, what should I do? Prabhupada said something interesting. He said, of course, he said, so you want me to tell you or you want my opinion? See, Prabhupada didn't want to tell her. So then he said, well, of course you can do whatever you want, but my opinion, it's better you don't marry. So he didn't even come across like, no, you shouldn't marry. He didn't come across like that. He said, well, you do what you decide. But if you ask me, then I would say no. It's like he's your guru, and he's your guru, and he's saying, well, if you ask me, if you want to know my opinion, but whatever you want. So Prabhupada was like that. He wasn't always authoritarian. Sometimes he would, he'd give presents to his disciples. When one disciple had children, he'd give them money. And the devotee would say, but I can't accept this from you, you're my guru. And Prabhupada said, no, it's for your child. I am not his guru. This money's for him, you can accept. So, it shows that even someone in an exalted position who is Krishna conscious is always grounded. And so that's important. Said in the Chaitanya Charitamrita that humility is the jewel on the head of bhakti, of prema. And it's said in the Jaiva Dharma that bhakti is made of humility. So it's one of the ingredients that you don't get bhakti, or you don't get love of Krishna. Without it, it's inherent within it. It's not optional. And I think sometimes we might think, well, you might be humble, you may not be, but you do your bhakti, you'll get Krishna consciousness. But theologically, it's not like that, because bhakti is an ingredient. Humility is an ingredient of bhakti, so you can't minimize it. Now, of course, you're all sitting out there thinking, oh, I'm so puffed up. How do you become humble? And like anything, you can't get it if there's not some taste for it or some desire. You'll notice in your life, sometimes you're trying for something in Krishna consciousness, but you're not getting it. And oftentimes the reason is because you really don't want it. You really don't have a taste for it. And as a result, you can't commit to it. Sometimes it's even so bad that it might even start to come and you reject it. So you have to want humility. But then the trick is that just to want humility is also a pure desire. So then it's like, okay, this is getting complicated. I'm supposed to want humility, but how do I even get the desire to want it? Well, one of the things that I've noticed in my devotional service is if you associate with another devotee who exhibits extreme humility, it has a very powerful effect. It will have a very powerful effect on you. And there was a devotee in our movement, it's no longer with us, named Jayananda. And he was a personification of humility. He was a personification of modesty. There are many humble and modest devotees in our movement, but I never met anybody like him. And when you come into his association, it was very difficult. It was very difficult to be proud. Because in the association of a humble person, if you're proud, it stands out so much. It's so obvious. And he was such a humble servant of everyone, even the newest devotee he would humbly serve. He was such a external manifestation of humility that his presence had a deep influence on those who came in touch with him. And there's a biography of his. And you'll read in that biography, many, many devotees will just say how they were transformed and touched by that. So, the Sankarshan says, an interesting story Srutakirti Prabhu told. So after Prabhupada gave permission for a devotee to leave his wife, Srutakirti asked him why he did that, and Prabhupada said the devotee was going to do it anyway. So giving his permission, the offense was left. In other words, if Prabhupada said don't marry, and Prabhupada knew he would have done it anyway, then it would have been offense. So out of compassion, Prabhupada let him do it. Interesting. Yeah, it goes to show that Prabhupada was not a dictator. He didn't think of himself as the owner of his disciples. He didn't think of himself as the controller of his disciples. You're my property. I mean, the disciple might think, I'm the property of my guru. I belong to him. I give myself. I give my wealth. I give my body. I give everything to my guru. That's all right. But the guru will never think like that. I mean, disciples should think like that. But the guru never thinks, oh, his disciple is mine. I own him. He's my slave. Whatever he has is mine. And if he doesn't give it, I'll beat him up. Prabhupada was never like that. There's one devotee. He made a large donation to Prabhupada early in the movement. And at that time, Prabhupada was not getting a lot of donations. Prabhupada looked at all this money and said, you sure you want to give this much money to me? Very interesting. I mean, why Prabhupada did that. But it's quite interesting, isn't it? That it was just, it wasn't in proprietor consciousness. So Pallavi says, or asks, we can pray to Krishna for humility and then just be prepared for the so many ways Krishna gives it to us. Yes? Be prepared if he doesn't give it to you. So my realization is that, I think I was telling you in last class, that in modern research they've done, they've found that talent and intelligence are not the key factors in success, but key factors in success are perseverance. So, you may pray to Krishna for humility, and maybe he won't give it. But you have to really want it. You persevere. And then when Krishna sees you want it, then he's like, okay, this guy is pretty serious. This is genuine. So that's the real key. So in this research, say you don't want it, you won't get it. So we have to want humility. I mean that's really what I'm trying to say. But I'm half asleep, so maybe it's not coming out right. The foundation for becoming humble is that we have to want it. And of course, I think another problem is we have to understand what humility is. I think some of us may not even understand it. And so we think we have it when we don't. But we have a problem. We're trying to impress others. We have a problem where we're concerned that others think we're advanced. We're concerned that others don't know our faults or understand our faults. We have these kinds of concerns. And that's a huge indication they're having trouble with humility. And Bhaktisiddhanta also said something interesting, which is it's not always understood by everyone. He said that my tendency to fault find is due to a lack of humility. And I find this interesting because, of course, some people in some situations, their service is to fault find, or if they see a fault and they don't do anything or say anything, that itself would be a fault. But if we're just talking in general life, then there's a lot of fault finding that's not necessary. And so Bhaktisiddhanta said it stems from a lack of humility. So I think it's important for us to understand that. I think it's important for us to meditate on that if we are fault finding. And otherwise, and he said something really interesting. He said even if there is a fault, because you would think, well, I'm not fault finding because there is a fault. I mean, this person did do something wrong or did do something weird or did do something inappropriate. But he said, and this is a general instruction again, but he said, even in the presence of fault, we are usually not justified in finding the fault. So why would he say that? It's interesting, isn't it? We're not justified in finding a fault, even if it is a fault. I think he said that because it would, it's like, okay, well, I'm proud, but I'm justified. I have justifiable cause to be proud, but that doesn't make sense. I don't have any good qualities, but I have justifiable reasons why. I just killed this guy, but I have justifiable reasons why I acted like a top-notch demon. I have justifiable reasons why I'm sinful. It doesn't make any sense. So he made that point. So even you have justifiable reasons to fault find, but it's a principle. Vaishnavas don't fault find. It's interesting, isn't it? I mean, what he's saying is it's a principle. We don't do it. So then, if it's principle, there's no justification. Now, if you're in management, or as I said, if you see something wrong and you don't speak out, that could be a fault, a bigger fault. But we're talking here in general. So these are interesting things to contemplate. Now, Senia says, I have concern about being humble in a certain environment, which remembers me. What do you mean, people know you weren't humble and now you are? So it's difficult. I'm afraid that people will mock me, humiliate me. Oh yeah, that way you'll become more humble. So what's the problem? If you're worried that they'll humiliate you, then that's pride. You want to become humble, then you go up to him and say, humiliate me, please, please, I want to be humble, humiliate me. Pull me down so I feel like a blade of grass. So, we should not be concerned about being honored or dishonored. We should be concerned, we want to please devotees. So in that sense, we want our service to be appreciated, we want to be appreciated in that way. But not for personal. Not because I'm embarrassed. Listen, Sanya, if people mock you, that's their problem. It's not yours. I mean, that's their pride. Right? Another thing, Sanya, is all those people you think are thinking about you are not thinking about you. So don't worry about it. We think, oh, people are looking at me, they're thinking about me. They're not. You know, nobody cares. Who cares what you do? Nobody's thinking about it. Just don't worry about it. And if they mock you, if they humiliate you, then that's their problem. That's their own lack of humility coming to the surface. So just take it as an opportunity that Krishna's giving you to be more humble. That's all. Sumishra says, desire is fine, but I think we really have to put in a lot of effort. Yeah. Both. Well, see, what my point was, if you don't want it and you put in the effort, it won't work, because your effort won't be sustained. Because what's going to sustain an effort? What's going to sustain an effort if you don't want it? I mean, that's going to be rare. So they go together. Once you're committed to it, and if you make the effort, then you're okay. So what's difficult, Sushma? Sure, well, it's very difficult. Put effort and remain alert. Yes, effort. Yeah. All right. So we'll address that. And sure, well, it's difficult. And I think the general answer, or the best answer, and I believe Prabhupada gave this answer. And we say, it's difficult being Krishna conscious, or difficult practicing it in the material world. And the answer is, what's the alternative? Of course, the answer to that question is there isn't one. So what's the alternative to putting in a lot of effort? There isn't one. So that's why we do it. Because if we do anything less, we're not going to get the result that we require. So if we say it takes a lot of effort to be Krishna conscious, okay, but it's just, it's like, it takes a lot of money to buy a Rolls Royce, but it's a Rolls Royce, so you pay a lot of money. So it takes a lot of effort to be Krishna conscious. Well, it's something valuable, so you have to pay for it. So if you look at it that way, then it's just you accept it. This is what's required. I have to do this, and I do it. And then Krishna likes it when you make an effort. Even if you don't do a good job, he likes you to see you trying. And that's when he fulfills your desire. So Sanya says, Vaishnavas, it's easier for me to deal with normal people. I don't know, it seems like a practical, something which is unique for you. I'm not exactly sure why it's easier to deal with them. Because you don't expect anything from them, so why would you find fault with them? You already accept that they're full of faults, but devotees shouldn't be full of faults. Is that why? Is that what you're saying? Sankarshan is saying, why Dharma the Bull didn't find fault or identify the perpetrator as the one who does that becomes as guilty. Oh yeah. Because in the Bhagavatam it said that Yeah, somebody commits a crime towards you, and Prabhupada says that the person who blames the perpetrator is as guilty. Because a couple of reasons. Being sleepy, I can only probably remember one now. But because it's your karma, that you're not admitting your karma. You're not accepting your karma. So you're just as bad as the person who did it. You're not accepting God's will in this. You're not accepting that you deserve it. You're not identifying the real cause. Not accepting Krishna's position. And so, it's another way you can look at it and say, well, you're guilty for not forgiving. You're guilty for blaming. So that's another thing. You're guilty. So, it's like if you misunderstand something, then you're making a mistake. So you're blaming this person to be the cause, but you're guilty of ignorance. And ultimately, a lot of times, what happens is we're really blaming God, isn't it? And why did this have to happen to me? We're blaming God. So then, now you're guilty of blaming God. Which is, if you're blaming your perpetrator, it's pretty much the same thing. One who commits the act and one who commits the act and one who blames the person who commits it is just as guilty. Because you misunderstand. As Prabhupada said, he's just an agent of your karma. So now you're blaming the agent. Bhaktisiddhanta also said that. And you can read it, maybe you know this quote, it's in Chaitanya Charitamrita. He said when people are served the fruits of their action in the form of sinful activities, they become upset. But they created the fruits. So now you're getting upset about something that you created. So they're after me here. So anyway, Palak says, what about pride in relationships? If one side is feeling humiliated, should it be accepted? You mean humiliated by the other? Well, you have two choices, accept it or fight back. And knowing you, I think you choose the latter. So you tell me, how's that working for you? I know the answer. Not working good. So, as I always say, Palak Paneer, if you want to learn, become humble, get married. It's the best way to be humble. Your wife will keep you humble. No doubt about it. All you have to do is accept it gracefully, and you'll be one of the humblest guys in the universe. But if you don't accept it gracefully, then you'll fight back. This may be the age of strife, but my personal opinion is that if we're fighting, that just means we're under the influence of this age, that we're being infected by it, because there's no reason for devotees to fight, because devotee means one who's in a mood of service, one who's compassionate, one who's kind, one who's tolerant. If you're a devotee, you have those qualities. If you have those qualities, you don't fight with other people. Very compassionate, understanding, tolerant, like that. So I'll tell you a story. Now in Bhagavatam it says in the age of Kali people have long hair. So one of Prabhupada's disciples hadn't shaved for a while, and he was preaching in some foreign country, and the Prabhupada said, why aren't you shaving? And he said, well, they're suggesting I don't shave be for preaching purposes in this country, whatever. And Prabhupada, he didn't like it. And he said, "You're just becoming a hippie again," and then something like that. And then he said, "You've been victimized by Kali Yuga." So he just saw a little hair. And this person had a little hair, and he said, "Oh, you're being victimized by Kali Yuga because that's the symptom." And it's said that men will think they're very beautiful if they have long hair. So that's my personal opinion. I stand by it. In many ways, we're being victimized by Kali Yuga. So you can't be victimized by it and then blame your shortcomings on it. Well, how come you guys don't get along? Well, Prabhu, it's Kali Yuga. What do you expect? Expect me to have a good marriage? It's Kali Yuga. Everybody fights. It's right there in the Shastra. I mean, come on. So that, that's not what it means to be a devotee. We're not under the influence of the age of Kali. At least we're not supposed to be. So that's the idea. That's my personal take on fighting. Okay, it's age of quarrel, it's age of hypocrisy, but chanting the holy name transcends this. So we're supposed to transcend it, not be part of it. And that is a huge problem because we become influenced by it. Become part of the mess. And then we act in ways which are not Krishna conscious. And then we think it's okay because after all, it's Kali Yuga. It's really a lame excuse. No, after all, it's the golden age of the golden avatar. So we should be transcending our human frailties by the mercy of the holy name. So, Prabhus, Matajis, and those who are not decided if they're Prabhus or Matajis, which is time for a story. And I've told this before, but I don't know if you all remember. Generally in India, not so much in America, but in India, we address the men as Prabhus and the women as Mataji. So, and I said, Prabhus and Matajis and those who are not yet decided. There was a boy coming to the temple when I was coming to the temple before I joined. And we were coming for a few weeks, few months, coming regularly, chanting japa. So, sometimes he put on a dhoti, kind of, get in the mood. So one day he shows up at the temple in a sari, and speaking like this, Haribol Prabhu, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. So, everyone's looking at this, thinking, what are we going to do with this guy? And nobody knew what to do, so they wrote Prabhupada. And Prabhupada said, tell him to decide what he is. And once he decides what he is, practice Krishna consciousness. That was Prabhupada's answer. That was it. So, therefore I said, Prabhus and Matajis and those who have not yet decided. So this boy, on Prabhupada's instruction, he needed to decide what he wanted to be. That's all Prabhupada said. So Palak says, I understand. So what should the humiliated side do, and what should the so-called humiliating side do? Oh, okay. All right. So the question, I don't know. It may not be Palak's, it may be Leela's question. So they're after me non-stop. They won't let me go. So, they should both kiss and make up. That's what they should do. I mean, I think fighting is the same principle as what I talked about humility. It's like, if people fight, I mean, ultimately, if you're fighting, if you're getting humiliated or you're humiliating somebody else, and you're in this environment, there's got to be some desire to just fight. You know, there's got to be like a mood to fight. I mean, you have to like it. Yeah, there's to be cricket. Yeah, my phone is a cricket. And one day it went off, and I was chanting in the samadhi, and I heard this cricket. I go, oh, there's a cricket in the samadhi. I forgot that I set my phone to a cricket. It was so funny. And it kept going off. I go, oh, there's crickets here. So, my impression is, we may have bad qualities, right? We may be angry, we may be proud, we may be this and that. But my experience in my own life and my experience in seeing other people's life is that those things go on so long as we don't come to this point where we say, I do not want to be like this anymore. I'm tired of putting people down. I'm tired of fighting back. I'm tired of trying to get one up on somebody else. That's when it actually changes. But until we get to that platform, you know, if you're fighting, or you're humiliating, or someone else is humiliating you, and you don't know what to do when you're humiliated because you want to fight back, that still means there's a desire. And it still means you're not fed up with the fact that this is not Krishna consciousness. You're still doing it. When you come to that point where you just say, this is stupid, and I'm not going to do it anymore, I'm fed up with this, it's not Krishna conscious, and it's not even some things, it's not even a question of Krishna consciousness, it's not even conscious. So, you have to come to that point, otherwise, what's going to be your impetus to change? You just have to say, this is stupid. There's a mode of passion, it's the mode of ignorance, and just forget it. I'm finished with it. It's not the way I want to live. That's when you make these changes. And then if you're in that consciousness, then humiliated, this and that, doesn't bother you. It's just, you don't want to retaliate something unsavory with something else unsavory. You just accept it. And you will find, Leela, and you will find Pelag. When you change your consciousness, it will affect your partner, and they will be less inclined to argue, to find fault, because you are less inclined, and it creates a different atmosphere in your life. Fighting is Kali Yuga, fighting is mode of passion and ignorance. How are we going to make advancement if we're living in those modes? So Prabhupada always said, you should try to cultivate goodness. So, you know, if you're fighting, you're cultivating passion, ignorance. If you're being humiliated and you accept it, you're cultivating goodness. You know, some people just like to humiliate other people, so it's unfortunate for them, but it doesn't have to affect you. That's my 2 cents. So, can I get your permission to go to sleep or do something? Because if I talk any longer, I'm going to completely forget what I'm talking about. I'm having a hard enough time remaining consistent in what I'm saying and staying awake. I've been on a sleep deprivation program for 10 days. I have not got enough sleep. 10 days, not one night. I think I maxed out at 5 hours and 45 minutes on a good night, and not making up, very little made up time, so it's attacking me now. So, now here's the problem. Next Tuesday, I'm going to be at the Govardhan Eco Village, and the last time I was there, the internet, you could only get it in one spot, and you had to be lucky even to get in that spot. So we'll have to see. Yeah, I'm happy you heard it together. Do me a favor and go on a non-argument band. Go on a non-argument protest. For 1 week, don't argue. See how you feel. I mean, look at it like this. You're devotees, which you're trying to be. Devotees are kind, devotees are compassionate, devotees are understanding, devotees are tolerant. Devotees serve. If you have those qualities, how is it possible to argue? It's just, it doesn't work. But it's only in the absence of those qualities that we can argue. Right? I mean, this is Sushma, I'm 3 stages beyond tired at this point. This is such an important principle. And what's the principle here behind this point I'm making? The principle is that if you look at Krishna consciousness, what it is, what it teaches, how it asks us to think and relate, the attitudes it asks us to have, the perceptions the knowledge gives us, that so many problems in our life we would not have, but we don't. We don't imbibe these principles. Sometimes devotees are irresponsible. Sometimes they don't tell the truth. Sometimes they're just downright unkind, inconsiderate, nasty. And you think, wait a minute, how can someone who's a devotee act that way? And we should ask ourselves. But then the next question is, well, does that mean I'm not even a devotee? Well, you decide what it means. But the point is, we are being encouraged to follow devotional principles and manifest devotional qualities, and so often we don't. So if you, Pelag, and you, Leela, just live as devotees, manifest devotional qualities in all your activities, you'd be fine. You'd never fight. There'd be nothing to fight about. Right? That's the point. Okay. So on that happy note, when I go to Israel, I'll perform the fire juggy for you. So I guess I better go because my wife is on my case. If I don't answer it, she might divorce me. So Hare Krishna to all of you, and we'll see you next week. Haribo.
Do you want me to bring some Shana to you?
Like what? I don't really need to eat. I can bring a piece of naan, that'd be good.